Week 14 is right around the corner. Tonight, we have Monday Night Football with the Giants up against the Patriots, and we are going to be jumping ahead into week number 14 in today's video. We're going to be breaking down my top 13 waiver wire ads to do before week number 14 of the 2025 fantasy football season. Before we can get on into things, though, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, like it owes you some money if you do end up enjoying. So without further ado, let's get into my top 13 waiver wire ads for week number 14 of the 2025 fantasy football season. We begin with my number one waiver wire ad of the week, Chuba Hubbard, running back of the Carolina Panthers. Now, the Carolina Panthers are on bye this week, as well as the San Francisco 49ers, the New York Giants, and the New England Patriots. Chuba Hubbard is currently rostered in 50% of the leagues over on Sleeper. He was the RB5 in PPR last week versus the Los Angeles Rams in one of the toughest matchups for running backs. They win that game 31-28. Now, all the finishes in today's video are prior to Monday Night Football, because Monday Night Football has not happened yet, and I obviously can't rub a crystal ball and tell you guys exactly what is going to happen, so many of the players may fall slightly in the finish from the week. Now, Chuba Hubbard had 17 rushes for 83 yards, as well as 2 receptions on 2 targets for 41 yards and a touchdown. In terms of the snaps, he played 59% of the snaps, Rico Dowdle played 42%, and Trevor Etienne played 8%. This is the first game since week 8 where Chuba Hubbard outsnapped Rico Dowdle. Now, does that mean that he has stolen the Iron Throne from Rico Dowdle as the RB1 in this offense? Of course not, right? A one-game sample size doesn't magically completely shapeshift the outlook of the offense. But if Chuba is available in your league, he is a very obvious ad, even if he doesn't fully overtake the role from Rico, because even with more snaps than Rico Dowdle, he had 19 touches last week, Rico had 20, and Etienne had 1. So if you are a Rico Dowdle owner, I don't want you guys to be in full-on panic mode, hit the panic alarm, wee-woo, 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 and full-on panic. Obviously, is it great what we saw on Sunday? It was great that they beat the Rams. That was miraculous. I don't know if anyone, even Panthers fans, would have expected that going into the game, but it does stink for Rico Dowdle managers that what happened on Sunday happened. But at the end of the day, one game where Chuba looks better than Rico Dowdle doesn't completely swing the pendulum. So while I do think Chuba Hubbard needs to be rostered, the fact that he's only rostered in 50% of the leagues is ridiculous. Over on Sleeper, it doesn't mean that coming out of the bye week, I'm going to pretend like Chuba Hubbard is this must-start asset. Then we got Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver of the New York Jumbo Jets, going up against the Miami Dolphins at home in MetLife. 7% rostered over on Sleeper for AD Mitchell. Wide receiver 5 in PPR last week versus the Atlanta Falcons. They win that game 27-24 on a kick that almost looked like, I don't know if you guys have ever watched Dude Perfect videos in the past, but it almost looked like a Dude Perfect trick shot where they're trying to, hit the ball into the smallest corner possible, because that thing just barely went over the goalpost at the bottom left. It was something crazy out of a movie almost, with how lucky that felt. Now, I guess if it was a movie, it probably would have bounced off the front. It would have hit the left, would have hit the right, and would have somehow fallen in slow motion through the uprights, but I mean, that was truly crazy in my opinion. Adonai Mitchell goes absolutely bananas. Wide receiver 5, they win 27-24. 8 receptions on 12 targets for 102 yards and a touchdown. 3 straight games since getting traded to the Jets from the Indianapolis Colts with 6+ targets. Jets wide receiver snaps last week. John Metchie, 97%. AD Mitchell, 36%, Isaiah Williams, 39%, 29%, Allen Lazard, and 2%, Tyler Johnson. So Metchie and AD Mitchell are the clear wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 on this team. Tyrod Taylor looked at least competent passing the football up against the Atlanta Falcons, which definitely boosts the value of a guy like AD Mitchell in terms of the targets. He had 12, Metchie had 8, Lazard had 1, Williams had 1, and Tyler Johnson had 0. So while trusting a Jets wide receiver is definitely a tough task, I do think that if AD Mitchell continues to get this many targets week in, week out, you are going to have the ability to start him as a flex option. Now we move to Brenton Strange, tight end of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Indianapolis Colts at home in Duval. 47% rostered over on Sleeper for Brenton Strange. Tight end 7 in PPR last week at the Tennessee Titans. They win the game 25-3 as the Tennessee Titans offense is completely and utterly limp dick. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 45 yards and a touchdown. Back-to-back weeks with 13 plus PPR points for Brenton Strange. Trevor Lawrence does love him a nice tight end. Shout out to a Bella Danger. So with Brenton Strange more than likely seeing 5 plus targets in a majority of games, he is a guy that you should feel confident about weekly in your lineup. Next up, we move to Chris Rodriguez, running back of the Washington Commanders, going up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota this week. 42% rostered over on Sleeper for C-Rod. Running back 32 last week in full PPR versus the Denver Broncos. They lose that game 26-27. 11 rushes for 41 yards and a touchdown over his last 6 games. He has scored a touchdown in 4 of 6 games in terms of the snaps. Last week up against the Broncos, 49% for McNichols, 41% for C-Rod, and 14% for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Commanders running back touches last week, 12 for C-Rod, 8 for McNichols, and 4 for JCM. So while Chris Rodriguez is far from this sexy play, right? He's not a guy that I really ever expect to go out there and put your fantasy team on his back. If you need a flyer flex play, if you need a flyer RB2, there are a lot worse options out there than Chris Rodriguez. Again, I'm not going to sit here and give him the metaphorical gawk gawk 9,000 special because he doesn't even remotely deserve that. But based upon his safety, I do think he should be at least rostered. Then we got Jayden Higgins, wide receiver of the Houston Texans, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead this week. 40% rostered over on Sleeper. Wide receiver 25 last week at the Indianapolis Colts. They win the game 20-16. 5 receptions on 5 targets for 65 yards. In terms of the snaps last week, 75% for Nico Cousin. Let's go Bowling Collins. 58% for Jayden Higgins. 55% for Xavier Hutchinson. 49% for Christian Kirk. And 24% for Jalen Noel. In terms of the targets, Rico had 10. Higgins had 5. Hutchinson had 5, Noel had 1, and Christian Kirk had 0. So if the team would just stop with the Christian Kirk experiment, if they would just stop with Xavier Hutchinson, I honestly think we would see Jayden Higgins produce at an even higher level. I don't love this spot up against the Kansas City Chiefs, if I'm being honest with you, but with Jayden Higgins being the clear wide receiver number 2 on this team, in my opinion, if CJ Stroud continues to look better and better as we get down the stretch of the season, there's no reason why you couldn't flex a guy like Jayden Higgins in a lot of matchups. Now, this week up against the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't think he's a must-start by any means, but he definitely would be startable. Then we got Darren Waller, tight end of the Miami Dolphins, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets. 37% roster on Sleeper. This game is in MetLife. Tight end 23 in PPR last week versus the Saints. They win 21-17. This was his return game after getting hurt back in week 7 in that monsoon game up against the Cleveland Browns. He had 2 receptions on 3 targets for 47 yards. Now, he would have had a touchdown if Tua didn't sail the ball over him, right? Darren Waller was wide open, and Tua missed him. It was kind of a game where Tua definitely didn't look the best. I'm not going to sit here and be some Tua defender because it's hard to defend what he does out there, right? It would sound foolish if I did defend him, but I do think Tua and Waller do have a good connection, at least from earlier on in the season before he got hurt. In 3 of the 4 games he played fully, he scored a touchdown or more in those games. So 3 of 4 games, he had at least 1 touchdown. The only time he didn't was last week. So it's very clear that him and Tua have a good connection. It's very clear that Tua loves to target tight ends in the red zone. We saw Jonnu Smith have a fantastic year last season, so Darren Waller is definitely a guy that should be rostered. In terms of snaps, Julian Hill played 55%, Darren Waller 47%, and Broncos legend Greg Dulcich played 37%. We did see Waller get slow rolled earlier on in the season in terms of his snaps, so the fact that he is not playing, 70% of the snaps yet shouldn't surprise anyone. I do believe that he will be coming around 70% of the snaps guy, making him a top 12 tight end for the rest of the season. Then we move to Bam Zonovan Donovan Knight, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, going up against the LA Rams. 41% rostered over on Sleeper. Before we talk about Bam Knight, though, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends, our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog, and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you will get a free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $10 on the pick'em, you will receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or bonus entries. How does the pick'em work? It is incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Bam Knight does go up against the LA Rams this week, so I definitely would cool down in terms of truly loving on Bam Knight this week, but I still think he would be startable. Now, Trey Benson should be back, but we have such little information. It seemed like earlier on last week, oh, Trey Benson's 100% going to play up against the Buccaneers, and then the final 2 practices of the week, he's not there. DNP did not participate. Back-to-back practice at the end of the week. That's not good. Since the team has until December 10th to activate Benson, we could definitely see him missing this week. So again, while it's not the best matchup, Bam Knight has put up 13-plus PPR points in 3 straight games. Last week, up against the Bucs, they lose 17-20. He has 11 rushes for 62 yards, 3 receptions on 3 targets for 36 yards, and a touchdown, 1 fumble lost. Again, 13-plus PPR points in 3 straight games. In terms of the snaps, 52% went to Michael Carter, 48% for Bam Knight. Bam, though, did out-touch him, 14 touches to Michael Carter's 10. Obviously, if Trey Benson is back, I think Bam Knight is irrelevant, as Michael Carter would play the RB2 role, and Bam Knight would kind of just pick up the scraps. But if Trey Benson was to miss again, I understand the matchup against the Rams is far from ideal. We did just see Chuba Hubbard look great against them last week. Now we move to Blake Corum, running back of the LA Rams, going up against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. 23% rostered over on Sleeper. Now, Kyren did leave last week with an ankle injury, but did end up returning, so I would assume that means that Kyren will be good to go in this matchup. Running back 18 in PPR last week at the Carolina Panthers. They lose 28-31, 7 rushes for 81 yards and a touchdown. 67% of the snaps for Kyren, 33% for Corum. 13 touches for Kyren, 7 for Blake Corum, and both of the guys scored a touchdown in that game. To me, Blake Corum is just clearly a handcuff, right? He isn't a guy with really any standalone value because it took Kyren Williams to exit the game for Blake Corum to end up scoring. So while Blake Corum will get a decent amount of touches, right, that is a guarantee. What he does more is just frustrate Kyren owners because maybe you thought Kyren deserved more touches, and Blake Corum's just snatching around 10 every single week. But at the end of the day, Blake Corum is just a handcuff. But considering Kyren already got banged up, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but we know that injuries can compound, right? Oh, he hurt his left ankle last week, then he plays through it, right? Then he plays this week up against the Cardinals. If his left ankle gets messed up again, it might be even more severe. So while I don't think anyone should be starting Blake Corum week in and week out, and I don't think you can rely on him up against the Arizona Cardinals, he is a high-value handcuff. And right now is the part of the season where you need your handcuffs at the running back position. If you have Kyren, you better not walk. Run to the waiver wire at the speed of the flash and pick up Blake Corum because you need your handcuffs. We're about to enter into the fantasy playoffs. You don't want Kyren to potentially go down and you be shit out of luck with your running back 1 or your running back 2, right? It's really that simple. So if you're a Bijan owner, get Tyler Algier. If you're a CMC owner, get Brian Robinson, right? This is the time of the year where handcuffs are extra important. Then we got Bhayshul Tuten, running back of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Indianapolis Colts. 41% rostered over on Sleeper. He does have a little bit more standalone value than a guy like Blake Corum, but his touches just bounce around way too heavily to be trusted. But if ETN was to miss time, then Bhayshul Tuten, in my opinion, has league winner written all over him. 41% rostered on Sleeper, RB 37 last week at the Tennessee Titans. They win the game 25-3, 8 rushes for 17 yards and a tug, 1 reception for 1 target. 1 reception on 1 target, I guess would be the correct way to word things there, and 2 yards. ETN played 49% of the snaps, 29% for Tuten, and 24% for LaQuint Allen Jr. So again, Bhayshul Tuten is just a handcuff. Then we got John Metchie, wide receiver of the Jumbo Jets, going up against the Miami Dolphins at home. 41% rostered on Sleeper. They won last week 27-24 up against Coles Cash, Kirk Cousins, and the Atlanta Falcons. Wide receiver 53, though, 4 receptions on 8 targets for 19 yards, 1 rush for -2 yards, though he did score a touchdown in the prior 2 games. And again, he still led the Jets in terms of snaps with 97%, Mitchell 86%, and the rest of the guys under 40%. Again, in terms of the snaps, Mitchell had 12, Metchie had 8, though. The other guys had either 1 or none. So while John Metchie did shit the bed, if you finally had enough confidence to play him because he scored a touchdown in back-to-back games, I know that hurts, but John Metchie still got 8 targets. The pendulum will swing back his way. So while as of right now, you may feel more confident in AD Mitchell, and I fully agree with that sentiment, that doesn't mean that John Metchie should just be sitting on your waivers. Then we got Isaac TeSlaa, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions, going up against the Dallas Cowboys at home in Detroit. 5% rostered over on Sleeper. Amon-Ra St. Brown is believed to have suffered a low ankle sprain. Dan Campbell said that Amon-Ra is a game-time decision. Since this game is on Thursday, I would expect him to miss, which would elevate Isaac TeSlaa up the offensive hierarchy, especially since Sam Laporta is not playing either. Wide receiver 24 last week for TeSlaa up against the tough Green Bay Packers defense. They lose 24-31 at home on Thanksgiving. This game is just 7 days after that Thanksgiving game. 2 receptions on 2 targets for 35 yards and a touchdown. Lions snaps last week, 94% JMO, 22% TeSlaa, 65% for Tom Kennedy, 6% for Amon-Ra because he got hurt off Jump Street. Shout out to Channing Tatum. So while Isaac TeSlaa is not like this long-term option, right? Metchie very easily could be a long-term option. TeSlaa is like a 1-week rental or 2-week rental, right? I would be shocked if Amon-Ra St. Brown, based on everything that I've read, misses more than 2 games, right? I could see him missing this week and next week and being back for week 16. So Isaac TeSlaa is a, short-term replacement, but up against the Cowboys defense, he could pay dividends this week. Then we got Devaughn Vele, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. 3% rostered on Sleeper. I do worry that Devaughn Vele could be fool's gold, and I think it would be hard deep down to truly actually start him in any given game just because of the offense that he's attached to. But he was the wide receiver 7 in PPR last week up against the Dolphins in Miami. Mr. 305, they lose 17-21, 8 receptions on 8 targets for 93 yards and a touchdown. Back-to-back weeks with 7+ targets. In terms of the snaps, Olave had 88, Vele had 88, and Mason Tipton, London Tipton's cousin, had 85%. In terms of the targets, Vele had 8. We saw Olave with 7, Tipton with 4, and the rest of the guys with 0. So while I think trusting Devaughn Vele is a very, very hard task, if he can keep getting 7+ targets, I don't care how much good we think Tyler Shuck is, right? Doesn't matter. If you're going to get 7+ targets, if he does it again, especially, we're going to be talking even higher of Devaughn Vele. So right now, you definitely want to scoop him up before he becomes a guy that's super expensive. But again, I do kind of worry that this could end up being fool's gold. Then we got Trevor Lawrence, quarterback of the Jaguars, going up against the Colts. He is the best quarterback to stream this week. 49% roster on Sleeper. If he's not available in your league, the quarterbacks to stream this week are looking gross. But if you have a question about it, leave it down below in the comments. Just like if you have a question about any other player I didn't talk about, right? Maybe Mike Evans is available in your league. Obviously, you add Mike Evans, right? But you get the point, right? If there are other players available in your league, we can talk about it down below in the comment section or over on the Patreon link in the video description. Quarterback 5 last week for TeSlaa up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. They win the game 25-3. 16 completions on 27 attempts for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns. 3 rushes for 25 yards. Trevor is a very consistent quarterback. Now, he's not going to consistently be a top 5 guy or even a top 10 or 12 guy. And he's never a guy that, you wake up in the morning, you're like, wow, I can't wait to see what Trevor Lawrence does today. Oh, man, gee willikers, I'm so excited to play Trevor Lawrence. No one in their right mind is fucking thinking that. I'm sure Liam Cohen deep down fucking hates Trevor Lawrence. But at the end of the day, he's good enough to be a high-end quarterback too most weeks. Could finish inside the top 12. Streaming up against the Colts could be a high-scoring game. Definitely worthy of being your starting quarterback, especially if one of your quarterbacks is on bye. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did happen to enjoy today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. Like I owe you some money. Leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on the screen if you have not seen them already. I love you guys more than you will ever know. Hope you have a great one. And as always, good boy.